first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, we appreciate you joining us wherever you're live streaming. Thanks for doing so. But I do want to encourage you to download that Fox 12 Oregon app. That is a great way to watch this show and everything else that we have going on here. But as you know, for Fox 12 Now, we live stream every weekday. I just mentioned it, but I'm going to say it again. Every weekday, starting at 1 p.m., going throughout the afternoon. And we've got a lot of coverage here for you today if you're watching live. But for this segment, I'm starting off, we're going to be talking about Nutria. Yes, Nutria. You can probably tell by the look on my face and my demeanor, I am not a huge fan of them. They are basically giant river rats. It's a lot more than that. But the reason that we are talking about them today is because, well, number one, they're an invasive species, and we're going to get into that. But also, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recently put out a statement encouraging people to eat them, hunt them, and eat them. There are lots of places where that does happen, where people do eat Nutria. You can do that. There are even recipe sites. But I wanted to find out a little bit more about locally here, whether that's something that is encouraged or how that would even work as far as hunting Nutria and all of that. And so we got into that and found out a lot of details with Keith DeHart, who is the Invasive Species Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I got Keith on to talk a little bit more about it, learn something about Nutria, and we'll answer the question, well, he'll answer the question of whether or not he will eat them. Would you? Let's talk about that. Here it is. To give everybody a definition, in case they don't know, because maybe there is some confusion out there. Keith, what exactly is a nutria?
Yeah, a nutria is it's a large semi-aquatic rodent. Has a very round tail in contrast to your beaver. With a flat tail, but they can often be confused when they're swimming in the water. They can get up to 24 inches long, up to 25 pounds. They can get fairly large. They breed regularly and can have up to 13 offspring each litter, and they can also breed like up to 3 times a year, as I understand it. They oftentimes don't live more than a couple of years old, but there was one study I found that showed that in captivity at Oregon State, one survived to be 12 years old. So
wow. So you mentioned the beaver side of things there too, and that's because of those teeth that they get confused with beavers?
Yeah. Nutria have large teeth, like many rodents do. They just have a similar coloration. People see them in similar habitat, and so it's really easy to confuse them when they're swimming in the water.
Nutria are considered invasive species here in Oregon. Is that right?
That's correct, Greg. Yeah, they are an invasive species, which means they didn't naturally occur here. Particularly, they were brought in by humans. And they cause economic and ecological harm, and that's kind of the definition we use for invasive species.
And so brought in by humans, from what I understand, they were originally, like, I guess from down south. Is that where they were first brought into the U.S.?
From South America, actually. Their native range is listed as like Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, that area.
But they've clearly done a pretty good
job
of surviving in North America.
Oh yes, yeah. They've done a good job here. They were brought in for the fur trade. They were also used for a while in biocontrol as an attempt to take care of like other aquatic weeds and vegetation, which they do very well, but they also spread and cause their own issues.
And let's talk about those issues so everybody can understand, how damaging these nutrias can be. Is it nutria or nutrias? What's the proper plural term?
I would say nutria. Yeah,
okay.
Multiple nutria. Yeah,
multiple nutria. So what is what are some of the problems that nutria cause here in Oregon?
Yeah, as with all invasive species, that they don't naturally occur here, so they didn't co-evolve with the other animals and habitat that they exist in. They disrupt the natural food webs. They cause competition for other native species, like the beaver. one of Oregon's, icon animals. They would cause competition for that. They damage vegetation, people's ornamentals that they might have in their yards. They can come in and damage that. They also, one of the most common issues that I hear of here in the Willamette Valley is the concerns about infrastructure, dikes and dams and ditches. They burrow into these areas and destabilize those infrastructure pieces that we have around the valley. And so they can cause all sorts of damage across from natural to our natural ecosystems to our human infrastructure that we depend on every day.
Yeah, those are those holes that you may see on the side of a bank,
Yep.
if going down the river. Yeah,
Yes.
I grew up in rural Oregon, and I very much remember seeing those holes in the side and getting past them as fast as I could when I was by the river.
Right. Yeah.
Not that there was anything necessarily to worry about, but I was a little kid. And it's creepy.
They're scary holes.
They're scary holes. Yeah, and they're kind of creepy looking. Nutria.
Yeah, and what could come out of those holes? You just never know.
Exactly. Well, there is a big report that's been going around, and I believe this was from California officials who are advocating to help, reduce the population of nutria, advocating for people to possibly hunt and then eat them. I want to ask, for the state of Oregon, do you have any similar recommendation, and should people be hunting or eating nutria?
Yeah, those reports came recently as a result of Invasive Species Awareness Week. And in Oregon, I don't think that I can professionally recommend that people eat them. However, I will add personally, though I have never eaten a nutria myself yet, I would certainly try it, provided it was cooked well and cooked through. And I know many people that have eaten them and have varied results. They've said they either loved them or they hated them. I think it depended on what you cooked them with and how you prepared them. I would add that as an animal in Oregon, they're an unregulated non-game species. That's how they're kind of classified in Oregon by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which means they are totally legal to hunt. In areas that you can hunt them. So public land where discharge of firearms is not an issue, or on private land with permission, totally legal to hunt them and take them. There is a distinction I would add for those that are hunters in Oregon. In Oregon, if you hunt a deer or an elk, our traditional game species, it is illegal to waste them. You have to consume them. However, nutria don't have that same regulation tied to them. So people can hunt nutria and not be required to consume them.
Okay. So, and this is all, do you need a license or anything like that in order to do so?
You don't need, well, to have to hunt them, it would be safest to have a hunting license. It would be best practice to have that. However, if you're on private land and with permission of the owner, it is my understanding you wouldn't necessarily need the hunting license, as they're an unregulated non-game species.
Okay. This is all good information to know. And, so you don't necessarily recommend to eat them, but you would try it if it was cooked well.
Personally, I'd absolutely try it. Yeah. Yeah, and there are people that do invasive species potlucks around our state and in the Willamette Valley, where they encourage such practices, because this is a lot of biomass that is not necessarily supposed to be here, and it could be a good way to remove them off the landscape and potentially move us towards a more natural ecosystem.
All right, and I guess finally, what do you think is the most important thing for people to know just about this giant rodent, the nutria?
Yeah, I think I would take that question much more broadly. When it comes to nutria, there's something that if you're in the Willamette Valley, they're in your face on a nearly day-to-day basis, probably. You see them regularly. And I think they serve as a great reminder of what invasive species are and can do. that when we play fast and loose with the animals that we bring in, whether they be for an industry like the fur trade or like the pet trade and things like red-eared sliders that have taken over in the Willamette Valley, the Nutria just serves as a great example that says, you know, let's be careful. Let's think about what we bring in and be careful about what we might release into our natural ecosystem, because we honestly, as humans, we don't know what we don't know, and invaders can come in all shapes and sizes and damage things that we don't expect them to damage, and cause problems that last for generations and generations. It's very difficult to remove an invasive species once they become established in an ecosystem, and so I think Nutria just serve as a great in-your-face example of, hey, let's be careful. Let's be cautious about our natural ecosystems.
A big, hairy, weird-teethed animal that has weird holes in the banks, to remind you.
Exactly. Yeah, scaring children in their watercraft going by the holes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's me.
So,
well, Keith, thank you very much. One more thing too, just for people out there who want to find out more about just, you know, invasive species or educate themselves here in the state of Oregon, and the Northwest in general, I mean, Washington as well, but for Oregon, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, you can go to myodfw.com, I believe, or just search for myodfw, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. We have some invasive species resources on our website. You can also search the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has got an invasive species database. And then I would also put one more plug in, Greg, for the Oregon Invasive Species Hotline, which is a resource that we have in Oregon. It's mandated by our legislature for us to have to connect any sightings for invasive species, whether it be a nutria, a bullfrog, a mute swan, a red-eared slider, or a snapping turtle. You can go to the Oregon Invasive Species Hotline and report those sightings, and those of us that are in the roles of managing and trying to take care of these situations, it gets an instant message to us. And so that's where I would go and suggest people go for more information.
So if you do see a nutria, you should call that line?
Yeah, you could go on. It's a web-based submission form, and while we know that nutria exist and are pretty ubiquitous in the Willamette Valley, it's great to have people reach out and say, hey, I saw one here, and if they have questions, they can connect with experts like myself and my other colleagues about what they could do to help mitigate the problem if they don't want to hunt or trap, or what else they can do to manage the issue.
Okay, great. Good information for everybody to have. Well, Keith, thank you very much, for having some time to talk to us about this and just to get some more education out there about nutria.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, and that's still gross. Just looking at that picture, I'm sorry. I do not find them adorable at all. A couple of notes, though. Huge thank you to Keith for joining us for that. One question that I know a lot of people have had is, why are the teeth orange? And the general consensus is because of iron that helps them with their enamel. Same thing with beavers, and so I guess it helps strengthen their teeth, which are constantly growing. We do have this live on Facebook right now as well. We're on a number of different platforms. We have some questions, or the question that we put out is, would you eat nutria? Some of the answers that we have here. Let's see, from Marcella, what is nutria? Just rewind it and watch this segment. That'll answer that question for you. That was my very first question in this. Let's see, Mark says, nope, but they are fun to shoot. Okay. Valerie says, no. So Valerie, I'm with you. And Joanne says, no, I would die of starving before I ever even tried to. I don't know if I would go that far, but I kind of understand exactly what you're saying when it comes to that. So so there we go. Again, huge thank you to Keith for joining us there to talk about this and talking about nutria, something that's we all see everywhere. We even have them outside of our station. So we've got plenty more coming up for you, though, here this afternoon. Lots of coverage for Fox 12 Now. And if you haven't done so, I encourage you to download the Fox 12 Oregon app. Great way to watch this show and everything else that we have going. And you can watch all of these segments afterward. But I will talk to you shortly. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.